This week, we go back to the middle-length discourses, the Majjhima Nikaya, this year, and actually this last few years, I noticed we have not been visiting the Majjhima Nikaya enough as we have been with the connected discourses or the numerical. So it's good that we're getting a chance to do that today. I actually have a couple of good news, new developments. One is that I was able to finally finish the first sutta and of the Digha Nikaya, which you've heard me mention many, many times. And it's quite a sizable sutta. And it's the net of wrong views. And in Pali, it's Brahmajala Sutta, which is another giant. So I decided that we will start the new year with that because it deserves that kind of an attention, and also consecutive weeks, because we can't afford to miss a week because the mind will veer into away from allowing the sutta to really sink in. So that is one important development, which took many, many months, if not years, because I started working on it, I think, about 4 years ago. So I recently finished it, and I would like to share it with you in the new year, coming new year. That'll be a gift to ourselves. And the second development, something that I have been asked over the course of, at least throughout the time that I've been a bhikkhu, individuals asking if I could get some of the recordings that I have been doing for the past 7 years or so into text. The suttas, which I have been retranslating. And given my crazy schedule and many, many responsibilities, of course, I have been, and health problems, which keep coming up, I've been unable to. But recently I decided that I will go ahead and put it in, collect them actually into a book form. In this case, the Anguttara Nikaya entire, 11 volumes. And it will be massive. It is already massive, and they've been all just scattered all over the place over the course of crazy, homeless life of a bhikkhu, folders, files here and there, texts, bits and pieces. So compiling all that, because it's one thing to have it be narrated, which one might be able to do on the fly by using all those separate different sources, and another entirely to put it in writing so people could hold in their hands and read. And so you'll have 2 sources of the Anguttara Nikaya. Well, actually 3. One of them is the Sutta Exploration series, where we cover many of them, some of them, many of them. The narrations, they're there already, and the books that I'm hoping that it will be available in the coming year. Early part, hopefully. It's a massive work, 11 volumes, and each volume is in the hundreds of pages. So, so those are the 2 new developments. that I would like to share with you. So the Dhamma is, at least on that front, the material front, is very much present, alive and well. All it needs now is our participation to practice it and put it into practice and train in it, which hopefully these series are helping you to do. So having taken that out of the way, today's sutta in many ways addresses that training, the attitude with which we say we are practicing or we would like to practice the holy life, of understanding the mind, understanding ourselves, the spiritual development, the transformation of ourselves, and all that it entails, the purification of oneself, body, speech, and mind, sila, samadhi, panya, the work that we have to do on the virtue front to develop an incredibly impeccable character in thought, speech, communication, and body. What it means to be a virtuous being, a virtuous living person, an adult living in the 21st century when all this craziness is going on. That is quite compelling. It's adamantine. It's so powerful. It's so out of this world, literally. It's a transformation that is alchemical. It's alchemy. You're transferring basic metals, lead, into gold, as evidenced by your own changes in your speech, in your behavior, in the way you treat yourself. You talk to yourself, the way you relate to yourself, and by extension to others. That means the Dhamma is working for you. You're actually doing the right things, the right steps. Whether you have made an official wish, told it to someone, vowed, took vows, whether you did those things or not, the practice is what counts. And that is basically, in a nutshell, the cornerstone of today's sutta, which is Bhūmija Sutta, a very, in some circles, very respected and well-known sutta. And here you're also going to encounter a few of the analogies that you've heard me use quite often that we get from the Buddha, such as you probably heard me mention several times that you cannot get oil, or you cannot get specifically sesame oil, by crushing and grinding sand. We see that analogy here in this beautiful sutta. Not just that analogy, but several others, which really enhances the beauty of the Dhamma. It makes it unique, unparalleled. So we see Venerable Bhūmija encountering a relative of his. Some say it was, some commentators have said that the person with whom he meets and the discourse takes place, this one, it happened to be his nephew, a Brahmin. So, but then the interaction it takes place there between both of them, and then he goes to the Buddha, and then that's what bhikkhus are supposed to do. Not just bhikkhus, but students of the Dhamma. When you have an interaction with Dhamma, relating with Dhamma, pertaining to the Dhamma, it behooves upon you to go ahead and check it with your teacher. It's necessary. That's why many people today are running the risk of going astray, and many people have, in the hundreds of thousands. That's not an exaggeration. Where they have these different platforms and forums where they go and talk, exchange ideas and keep talking. Platforms like one time there was some of my students wanted me to interact, use, it's called Discord, I think. And I asked what kind of a program or platform is when the title is Discord. Means you're going at it, you're fighting. It's like there's it's not discussion, it's not harmonious discussion, there's clashing going on. So that doesn't exist when the student goes, they might have clashed with others, but then they go to the teacher, and when they have to report to the teacher what they have said, what they heard, relate the story, relate to what they expressed. Again and again and again, we have seen this thousands of times through the suttas, throughout, where this, even somebody as high up as Venerable Sariputta or Mahamoggallana, after their encounter with someone, a discussion that took place, they would go and relate that to the Buddha, in case they might have misspoken, they might have misrepresented the Buddha, or their understanding needs a little bit of tweaking, or there's some smudges that have to be fixed. And only the teacher can. That's why they're called a teacher. This is key in today's conceit-driven society, where everybody is being pushed towards seeing themselves as a master from the womb, basically. You crack out of the eggshell, you already are supposed to be venerated. That's the attitude we have, and that's one of the major problems of society in the world today. Ego-driven. That's the social media scene. Everybody is a celebrity, or one is about to become one, at least in their mind. That's a dangerous, dangerous path. It kills off humility. So even when the discussions were held between arahants, they would go and report it to the Buddha. See, what does he say about that? And in many cases, Lord Buddha would say, yes, I would have said the same thing you did, like in the Chula Vedalla Sutta between Venerable Arahant lady, Dhammadina, and the layman, the lay Upasaka, who was a noble disciple, Visakha, when they were having a conversation. And then he goes and relates to the Buddha his conversation that he had had with the Arahant, Dhammadina, Teri. And Lord Buddha says, Visakha, had you asked me all those questions, I would have answered you the same way as she did. But that locks itself into the suttas, into the history, and it can be used, that it has been for centuries now, as a valid source of knowledge, a valid source of understanding, clear. There's so much humility there on part of Lady Dhammadina Teri, and in this case, Venerable Bhūmija. So I'm saying those things also to help us to see the value of humility in its role that it has to play to deepen our practice and understanding. You cannot bulldoze your way into, by practicing vipassana or something like that, or even any jhanic practices, and somehow expect to attain. It's impossible, because you have this big, big chunk of ego standing in the way, and it will not allow you to move an inch towards understanding Dhamma, despite what the ego says. So that's one of the reasons why we also use the suttas, to understand and to encourage us with what is already out there that can help us. So having said that, let's dive in. This is MN 126, Majjhima Nikaya 126. The middle length discourses is from the Sunyata Vagga. These are the heavy-duty suttas where it's going deeper into the sunyata, which is emptiness or voidness, which many people think that it doesn't exist in the Theravada teachings. Well, that's where it's from. It was not an invention of, later Buddhism. It was there in the Lord Buddha's teachings, and Lord Buddha said so many times how It is the Dhamma will collapse, will diminish, will decline, will disappear when the bhikkhus stop talking, when people stop looking at, studying his teachings on sunyata. The earliest teachings, I mean, not later on what we see developing into Mahayana and, all that. No, that's not what Lord Buddha means. Sunyata here, it's the emptiness that occurs beyond, the asankata state. Anidassana vijnana. These are clues to see, not just the concepts, not just the principles. We don't worship the Four Noble Truths or the 12 links of causal relations. These are just concepts. They're not the real deal as far as real attainment goes. They're the concepts, I mean. We have to use those concepts to really touch the deathless. So it's from that section, and the sutta is called Bhūmija Sutta, Discourse to Bhūmija. Let's start. I have personally heard this. Once the Blessed One was residing at the Squirrel Sanctuary Monastery in Rajagha's bamboo park, when one morning the Venerable Bhūmija put on his robes, and by taking his outer robe and alms bowl along with him, he went and approached Prince Jayasena's home to receive his meal. Then, on seeing the Venerable Bhūmija approach, Prince Jayasena went to greet the Venerable and began exchanging friendly greetings with him. Once inside, the Venerable Bhūmija sat on the seat that was prepared for him. Then, as the exchange of courtesies came to a close, Prince Jayasena went and sat to one side, after which he addressed the Venerable Bhūmija by saying, Master Bhūmija, there happen to be certain recluses, religious practitioners, and Brahmins, holding on to various beliefs, who go on practicing according to different teachings, each with its own diverse views and perspectives, such as, even if one commits to living the holy life, having already made a vow or determined to reach its highest fruits, still that is no guarantee that they will, in fact, be successful in doing so. So he's saying, relating, this is one of the contemporary views that they had in the teachers, dispensations, what their teachers, Brahmins, etc. So even if somebody makes a vow to reach the highest goal of a path, still that means it's no guarantee that they will be successful in doing so. So it's up in the air type of a thing. Okay, that's one. The next one view is, while living the holy life, if one has not made a vow or determined to reach its highest fruits, still that is no guarantee that they will, in fact, be successful in attaining it. So even if you don't make a vow, so this is a pattern that you see in Indian philosophies, where they present the affirmative and then they present the negative of that position. And then you're going to see the combination of both. Neither, which is next. So while living the holy life, whether one has made a vow and determined to reach its highest fruits or not, really, it makes no difference, because either of those are no guarantees that one will indeed attain the highest fruits of the holy life. So let me read the next one, and then I'll say a few words. And the fourth one is this: while living the holy life, neither the making of a vow or determining to attain its highest fruits, nor by not making any such vows or determinations, could serve as a guarantee that the person will, in fact, be successful in attaining the fruits of the holy life. So they covered all the bases, as it were. Basically, it's up in the air, the holy life, the attainment of the highest goals, for which one embarks on the spiritual journey, which we call the holy life in the Dhamma. Now, given life's difficulties, when a person hears a teacher saying these things, what does develop or becomes even stronger is negligence. Because life is already difficult. Material world is very tempting. The jumping between the two extremes of the pendulum of from pain to pleasure, always seeking to have that versus the pain, is very tempting, is very engaging. The whole world is going in that direction. So this is a perfect excuse for you, for the person, for the practitioner, to hear this and say, well, if there's no guarantee, then what's the bother? Like, why do I even bother? I'd rather go to the church, to the mosque, to the temple, and to the synagogue, whatever, and light a candle or make my chants and pay my dues to the place, and that'll be the end of it. I'll do my pilgrimages, I'll do my thing, and I'll go home, and I'll like, yeah, that gets me as close as possible, because, hey, there's no guarantee. When you say it out loud, you see that many of the religions in the world, including Buddhism, has fallen into this trap. At least the way that Buddhism is practiced today in temples and how it's being taught, how it's being encouraged for the followers of this path, of this religion, shall we say, in temples are being told that Nibbana is something to be attained later, in your next life, which is very similar to the Judeo-Christian, Islamic, or whatever religions out there that say, once you die, then you're going to go and join with the higher spirit, Almighty God, some form of that. In this case, it will be some Buddha realm or something like that. Why? Because you cannot. There's no guarantee that you can actually really attain the fruits of it, of this path, while you're alive. Do you see where and how negligence kicks in? This is Mara's favorite tool, which is always there, whether you have Buddhism, Hinduism, or any other ism, any other religion, because it pulls you out from the state of urgency to look at suffering and seeing that, okay, this is something that needs to be remedied. Old age. And then you understand there's rebirth. You're like, I have to stop this cycle. But then when you're presented with a statement like that there's no guarantee by a teacher claiming to be practicing the holy life, you're really confused. And time is ticking, and the person dies. There goes another life. But you can always rely on those rites and rituals business that you engaged in at the end of your life, saying, well, at least I've done those. That's not the path. So no guarantees, basically, whether the person made vows or not. So let's see what Venerable Bhūmija's response shall be. So Jayasena, Prince Jayasena is going to complete his question here. Therefore, we are curious to know what Master Bhūmija's own teacher has to say about these proclamations just mentioned. What would be his response, sir? How would you say he would explain or clarify these points of view? It's interesting that Jayasena, Prince Jayasena, is asking Bhūmija about his teacher's position in regards to these questions. So he wants to get to the source, but he's not with the Buddha. So the next best thing is to speak to a student of the Buddha. And here's Venerable Bhūmija. Then the Venerable Bhūmija replied by saying, "O Prince, I cannot say that I have ever heard of such viewpoints being discussed in the presence of the Blessed One in regard to living the holy life, nor of such ways of approaching it. However, it may be possible that the Blessed One would explain and clarify such points of view in this manner. When you haven't heard your teacher say something, to go ahead, not just in the case of student-teacher relationship, anything, and then you go ahead and make up your stuff, your own story, that's the same as lying, speaking falsehood. But he's not speaking falsehood. He's saying, I've never heard of Lord Buddha saying this. I've never heard that somebody telling me that the Buddha, reliable person, telling me that the Buddha has said that. So there's no reference. However, he's saying, if Lord Buddha would be presented with some theme like that, this might be a way that my teacher would respond. It's not final yet. Might, he's saying. So this would be, in his opinion, what a possible answer might be from Lord Buddha. Even if one commits to living the holy life, but does so in a radically unwise and therefore erroneous and crooked way, then it is impossible for such a person to attain its highest fruits. Similarly, if one goes on trying to live the holy life without having vowed or determined to do so, but in a radically unwise and therefore erroneous and crooked way, then again, it is impossible for such a person to attain its highest fruits. So the first one had made a vow, but following an unwise path. The second one has not made a vow, but still is following an unwise, crooked path. And let's see the third one. Whether one is committed and indeed tries to live the holy life or not really makes no difference at all, because so long as they approach it with a radically unwise and therefore erroneous and crooked understanding, then again it will be impossible for such a person to attain its highest fruits. And while living the holy life, neither through making a vow by determining to attain its highest fruits, nor by not making any such vows or determinations, so long as their understanding is unwise and therefore erroneous and crooked, then again it will be impossible for such a person to attain its highest fruits. However, this is Venerable Bhūmija's, well, let's see what he says. However, if one approaches living the holy life with an approach that is radically wise and therefore genuinely noble and correct in its motive, then regardless of whether one has indeed made a vow to do so or not makes no difference, for they will attain its highest fruits. Do you see how pragmatic it is? How practical, how real this is? Whether the person makes a vow or not really makes no difference, so long as they are on the right path. If you jump on a road, get in your car or on a bus that takes you somewhere, it's the right bus to take you from here to there. Now, whether you have made the vow to go there or not really doesn't matter, because you're on the right bus. Because the bus will come to its final stop and it will open the door and let everyone out. Even if you don't want to go out, they will kick you out and you're going to get there, and guess what? You are at that place. Why? Because you followed the right path. So it really doesn't make a difference whether you do make a vow or not, so long as you're determined to stay on the right or correct path. Let's see the next one. Similarly, even if one has not made a vow to live the holy life, that makes no difference, for so long as one possesses in his heart the approach that is radically wise and therefore genuinely noble and correct in its motive, then that person will attain its highest fruits. Similarly, whether one does make a vow or not to live the holy life, if their approach is radically wise and therefore genuinely noble and correct in its motive, then it is only a matter of time for that person to indeed attain its highest fruits. And also, if one's approach is radically wise and therefore genuinely noble and correct in its motive, then whether they neither make a vow to live the holy life or not, that person will be successful in attaining its highest fruits. Now, O Prince, as mentioned earlier, I have not heard these particular responses from the Blessed One himself. nor do I know if he has indeed made these statements which I just stated to you. Yet, given your original question, I infer that these would be plausible replies the Blessed One might in fact provide to listeners, if and when such questions are asked of him. So it's very, like, so perfect. Because he's saying, I never heard Lord Buddha say this. Given what I know of the Dhamma, given what I know of the teacher, and given the questions you asked, this is what I think Lord Buddha would say. But these are not his words, as far as I know. Look at the humility. Look at the rational thinking. And not beating around the bush. He's not an eel wriggler, as they say. He's not flip-flopping through his answers. He's just saying, he's very concrete, very matter-of-fact, very open. Then Prince Jayasena replied by saying, if this is how Master Bhūmija's own teacher would respond while addressing and clarifying these points which I inquired of you, then clearly he has indeed left all those so-called religious practitioners and Brahmins in the dust of his trail. For surely Master Bhūmija's teacher stands high above in his depth of understanding when compared to such fools in their deluded thinking. So he just saw the high level of understanding of the Buddha compared to all the idiotic thinking of those people who made up those premises. That, yeah, there's no guarantee. It's up in the air. It's a guesswork. It's a gamble, basically, which is what you have in any religion, any way of thinking that it says, well, it's just a mystery. You have to accept the mystery. It's you know, it's not in our hands. It's God's will. It's the destiny. Oh, it's written on your forehead. You know, it's written in the stars. Those are for naive children, not for adult human beings who are mature, who have seen life. So no one's fooling you anymore. So these answers were very concrete because it's matter of fact. So he acknowledges the Buddha. Then Prince Jayasena began serving the Venerable Bhūmija with his own hands by filling up his alms bowl with sumptuous food. Later, after leaving Prince Jayasena's home, once the meal offering had finished, the Venerable Bhūmija went and approached the Blessed One, as he offered his respects by paying homage to the teacher. Then he went and sat to one side, as he began addressing the Blessed One while recounting what had taken place earlier, and in particular, the conversation between himself and Prince Jayasena. By the way, if you notice, in countless suttas, you have that preamble, as it were, where the person approaches the Buddha, pays homage, if they're respectful, and then they sit to one side. They go and sit to one side. Ever wonder why that is? To one side? Because traditionally, it would be rude to sit face to face with the teacher, right, in front of the teacher. It's disrespectful. So I don't know if this is just particularly from the Buddhist tradition, but it's one that is seen throughout the early texts, where the person comes and they sit a little bit off to the side. And that is leaving room, because it might be disrespectful for the person who's sitting behind you. So to sit a little bit off to the side, just a little bit even, is a good gesture on the part of the person who came to venerate or the student coming to ask a question. Something to have in mind. So not to sit face to face, a little bit off to the side. because that's a little bit also might be, for the brain, at least, or the questioner, too confrontational. Two armies go at each other, two enemies, two opponents go at each other. But that is not the atmosphere for such a thing, where you have a teacher and a student. That's why the student goes and sits a little bit to the side, something to ponder later. Let's go. Continue. So Bhūmija just recounted what had taken place, and now we're going to see what happens next. Once he had done so, the Venerable Bhūmija asked the following question to the teacher. Blessed Lord, I hope and trust that in answering in such a manner, while providing those answers to the householders' questions, I did not misspeak nor misrepresent the Blessed One in any way, shape, or form, by speaking what might have been false and baseless. Therefore, Bhante, did I speak statements that were accurate and true in relation to the Dhamma? Because, Bhante, my wish is that in explaining and providing a clarifying response to Prince Jayasena, my replies were according to and in line with the Dhamma, and not statements that go against the Dhamma. Hence, they would not place either myself or the statements I made in a position that is open to being refuted or criticized. This is humble. This is also leaving room for the person to take in more Dhamma. The cup does not have a lid. The bucket does not have a lid, or the bowl is not turned upside down. The vessel is not turned upside down, where even if there's a rainstorm and pouring thunderous rain coming down, not a single drop of rain will go inside the vessel, the cup, the bowl. So in today's world, people have become very much like those bowls and those vessels that are turned upside down. Meaning, I know enough, and I'm okay with that. And in fact, I know more than you, etc., etc. There's nothing you can teach me or anyone can teach me. This is arrogance. This is conceit. It has no place in the Dhamma. So, by him asking, Bhante, did I misspeak? Did I misrepresent? Is it possible that I might have said something that you would never say? So that I don't want to get criticized or misrepresent you or the Dhamma. And the Blessed One replied by saying to the Venerable Bhūmija, truly, Bhūmija, in providing your answers, you did not misspeak nor misrepresent the Tathagata in any way, shape, or form, nor did you speak what might have been false and baseless. Therefore, the words you spoke by providing your answer and explanation are surely in line with what I teach. Hence, what you said is certainly in line with the Dhamma and not against the Dhamma. And as such, there are no grounds here for either you or your statements to be refuted or criticized at all. You can see Bhūmija, Venerable Bhūmija go, oh, thank you. But you can also see that he's a very, very good student for another reason. A good student is one who is eager to learn. Okay, yes, all right. Because that just, what Lord Buddha said, just validated, okay, your answers were right, which means you're wise, you're smart. Okay, you gave the right answers, in a sense. If you're not going to get criticized, that means, okay, you're in the ballpark of what the Buddha would say. But you're like a sponge there waiting for the Buddha now to add more gems of Dhamma. You can almost sense that Venerable Bhūmija is like, what would you say, Bhante, to this? I'm curious, what would your answers be to Prince Jayasena? Let's see. For truly, Bhūmija, there are many recluses, religious practitioners, and Brahmins who live in practice. regardless of the fact that they did make a vow or determination to live the holy life. Yet, so long as they are driven and motivated by wrong view, wrong intentions, wrong communication, wrong action, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, and wrong concentration, they will keep failing in attaining its highest fruits. Similarly, if one tries to live and practice the holy life, regardless of the fact that they did not make a vow or determination to do so, if they are still driven and motivated by wrong view, wrong intentions, wrong communication, wrong action, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, and wrong concentration, then they will keep failing in attaining its highest fruits. Also, whether one has made a vow and is determined to live the holy life or not really makes no difference at all, because so long as they are still driven and motivated by wrong view, wrong intentions, wrong communication, wrong action, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, and wrong concentration, they will keep failing in attaining its highest fruit. And when trying to live the holy life, regardless if one has neither made a vow by determining to attain its highest fruits, nor has not made any such vows or determinations, so long as they are driven and motivated by wrong views, wrong intentions, wrong communication, wrong speech basically, wrong action, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, and wrong concentration, they will keep failing in attaining its highest fruits. And what is the reason for this? It is because, Bhūmija, their approach to living and practicing the holy life is radically unwise, for they are possessed and led by their erroneous and crooked understanding, which makes it impossible for them to attain any fruits, let alone the highest fruits of the holy life. I gave already an example of the bus that we get in, or road that we take, or, a recipe that you're trying to make or to do, but with the wrong ingredients. Words that we use, expecting the words to actually say the reality of things, when the heart is directed in a different trajectory, 180 degrees different than what the words are saying. Similarly, with being on the wrong path, meaning wrong view. If wrong view is present, it doesn't matter what path you're trying to use, what vows you're trying to make, or have told people. If it is the wrong trajectory, you're going to get to the wrong place. People say, I have made a vow and I'm not going to fall into for those addictions. I'm never going to do this. I'm never going to say this. Okay. What methods are you using? Is it the right method or the wrong method, the crooked method? If it is the crooked method, there's not enough willpower to make the wrong path turn into the right path. No amount of intentional thinking can do that, for if it is set on the wrong view, you have the wrong perspective, wrong understanding. But Lord Buddha explains this beautifully here with the analogies that are coming up. Here, Bhūmija, imagine there was a person in need of some sesame oil. So he decides to go looking for it. But during his search to obtain some sesame oil, he collects a bucket full of sand. And after drizzling it with some water, he starts squeezing those grains of sand together by applying pressure on them in the hopes of extracting some sesame oil. However, despite his best efforts, and no matter how exhausted he becomes from his futile efforts, he still will fail in extracting even a single drop of sesame oil from pressing and grinding those sand grains together, regardless of having made a vow or determination to attain his goal. Similarly, Despite his best efforts, and no matter how exhausted he becomes from his futile efforts, he will still fail in extracting even a single drop of sesame oil by pressing and grinding those sand grains together, regardless of not having made a vow or determination to attain his goal. Also, despite his best efforts, and no matter how exhausted he becomes from his futile efforts, he still will fail even to extract even a single drop of oil from pressing and grinding those sand grains together, regardless of having made a vow or determination to attain his goal or not. So the goal has nothing to do with your vow. This is difficult for many people to understand. Yet our society puts such a big emphasis on promises and vows and things or statements. My question has always been, yeah, okay, we're buying time. The other day I was answering a question about love and what it means to love, like how do you express, etc. What is enough, to express the words "I love you," for example. People think that that's it. Well, I said it. It means nothing. And I was making a comparison with the Chinese way of greeting each other. In Chinese culture, it's quite beautiful. When they say, "Have you eaten yet? Did you have something to eat?" It's a lot more viscerally relatable. It's very real compared to "I love you." Oh, yeah, sure, whatever. Show me. Don't tell me. So it's very similar. When we're saying "I made a vow," well, what does that mean? People get married in front of thousands of people, or in front of, I don't know, millions of people or hundreds of people, vowing to each, yeah, I will be with you, I will, the politician, the same thing. Okay, show me your path. What methods are you applying that's going to set you apart from how you were then? Why is this different now for you? What methods are you applying that are different now? Not the vow, not the promise, not the title that says "I'm a Buddhist" or "I'm a Buddhist monk." Means nothing. How is your lifestyle? How are you living and practicing? That is more important. That means you're going outside of the bounds of pretense. You're not fooling anyone, especially yourself, because that's what vows do when they're empty, when they're not following a right path. And despite his best efforts, and no matter how exhausted he becomes from his futile efforts, he still will fail in extracting even a single drop of oil from pressing and grinding those sand grains together, regardless of having made a vow or determination to attain his goal or not having made such a vow. And what is the reason for this? It is because, Bhūmija, his approach is radically unwise, for he is possessed and led by his erroneous and crooked understanding, which makes it impossible for him to extract a single drop of sesame oil in that manner. And so it is, Bhūmija, with those recluses, religious practitioners, and Brahmins who live and practice the holy life, regardless if they have indeed vowed and are determined to live the holy life or not. So long as they are driven and motivated by wrong views, wrong intentions, wrong communication, wrong actions, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, and wrong concentration. That's the Noble Eightfold Path, by the way. They will continue to fail in ever attaining the highest fruits of the holy life. Why? Because they are on the wrong path. You have to understand there are multiples of wrong paths, but there's only one right path. And that is the Arya Atangika Magga, the Noble Eightfold Path. There's not many versions of it. It's not up to interpretation. Also, Bhūmija, imagine there was, this is a second analogy or metaphor, simile. Also, Bhūmija, imagine there was a person in need of some milk. So he decides to go looking for it. But during his search to obtain some milk, he grabs hold of the horns of a cow that has recently given birth and starts twisting and squeezing them in the hopes of extracting milk from those horns. However, despite his best efforts, and no matter how exhausted he becomes from his futile efforts, he still fails. He will fail in extracting even a single drop of milk from squeezing and twisting the cow's horns, regardless of having made a vow or determination to attain his goal. It's kind of a grotesque or funny scene. You have a cow with the udder and all that, and it's a cow that just gave birth, meaning she's going to be full of milk. And you go and you're like, yeah, I'm going to get milk out of this cow. But you're going about it the wrong way. Twisting the horns. That's not where milk comes from. We laugh because it is grotesque, it is funny, but it's also indicating the idiocy or the stupidity of the person, the foolishness of the person. Because sometimes, if not most of the times, we count so much, we put so much credence on the vow or the intention without applying the right methods. And this is a really burning fire in today's society, from youngsters all the way to adults, where people want to, as I said in the beginning, want to be celebrities. They want to stand out. They want to shine, not just in the field of householders or laity. I've seen this a lot for decades in monastics, even before I was one, before I became a bhikkhu. I would see this. Everybody wants to stand out. Why? Conceit. But there's a mechanism underneath. That is called avidya. That's doing its thing. That's keeping us in samsara. Because it's not allowing us to see, okay, let me look beneath my feet. Am I on the right path? Forget about the intentions, the vows, and the seriousness, and all the hoopla, all the big ceremonial things of what I look like, what I've said to people, this, that. How am I living my life? And this you can take into areas of life in the field of business, entrepreneurship. People say, I want to become a billionaire, a millionaire, I want to be famous. Okay. Are you working towards that? Yeah. And you see, they are definitely working towards that. But then the next very important question should be, well, working with what tools, what methods are you applying? I think people attribute it to Einstein, but some said, no, it wasn't him who said this. But basically, the saying that to keep on doing the same thing and getting the same results, but wanting to get a different result, is a definition for insanity. To keep doing the same thing, getting the same result, but somehow wanting to keep doing that yet get somehow a different result altogether, that's insanity. But that's what we do. That's what the Buddha said 26 centuries ago. Is there yoniso manasikara? Is there wise, radical attention to how I relate with real life, to the way I'm making contact with the world, with the six senses when they're touching the world around me? Am I approaching them with the right understanding? Or am I putting a self in there? Am I putting a gratification, a seeking of satisfaction in there? Or am I seeing the danger in there and therefore running away from that by saying, no, you're not going to trap me. I'm going to keep observing until this goes away. Already you started to cut the shackles, to loosen the grip, to cut the bonds, the yokes, to cut your connection to samsara. You're already doing it with the knife, the blade of wisdom. because you're practicing the right method. But this one is not, because he's going and squeezing the horns of a cow expecting milk. Okay? So Lord Buddha uses the same method, applying those 4 wrong views, interpretations of those Brahmin teachers, as whether you make a vow. So Lord Buddha is saying, whether you have made the vow, you did not make the vow, you neither did or did not make the vow, or you did and did not make the vow, it doesn't make a difference. You keep on squeezing the cow's horns, you're not going to get a drop of milk. Whether you did make the vow or the wish, whether you have the desire, such as chanda, the fervent desire to get milk or not, it is irrelevant, because you are not at the right place in the body of the cow. The approach is wrong. And what is the reason for this? It is because Bhūmija, his approach is radically unwise, for he is possessed and led by his erroneous and crooked understanding, which makes it impossible for him to extract a single drop of milk from the cow in that manner. I'm going to jump. Again, this sutta is, I mentioned this many times, but the sutta is available on the website. Please read it at your own pace, because I'm going to jump, because it's, I want to save us some time. Furthermore, Bhūmija, imagine there was a person in need of some freshly made butter, and thus he decides to make some. So he pours some water into a container and starts churning it nonstop with a stick, in the hopes of making fresh butter for himself. With water, by the way. However, despite his best efforts, and no matter how exhausted he becomes from his futile efforts, he still will fail in making a single dollop of freshly made butter, regardless of having made a vow or determination to attain his goal. You can't get butter from water. But look around you in life. Maybe look at yourself in the mirror. Oftentimes when we're on the wrong path and we keep slamming our heads against the wall of reality, expecting something else to happen, and we say, why am I hurting? Why am I hurting? Why am I hurting? I'm in pain. Okay, you're in pain. Okay, that's what? That's dukkha. That's the first noble truth. What do we know about the first noble truth? If I am suffering, then there's got to be somewhere craving present. Maybe it's my expectation to get a certain result. Maybe I'm trying to run away from a fact that is unpleasant and painful, that is taking place right now, and I can't escape it, like a severe backache, or a headache, or a loss of a loved one, or a loss of a job, or a loss of a relationship, or a loss of reputation, something that you don't want to have happen, but it is there in front of you at your doorstep. That's painful. So we refuse to see it. We want to change it. We want to make the pain go away. That is what causes us to have emotional and psychological pain on top of the physical one. That is where the Dhamma can come to help us alleviate the pain, which is the emotional and psychological pain. The physical, the Dhamma is not going to ultimately have much of a say in, because that's not the objective of the Dhamma. That's part of kamma. It's old kamma that's coming in. It's okay, fine. But the moment I am fighting with that, I'm adding more suffering to myself, oil into the fire. What did I do? I applied the right method. So there's no surprise. In a sense, this is a guaranteed system. Unlike the other system that we went over, the 4, where there's no guarantee. Here in this system we call the Dhamma, you see everything fits beautifully. It doesn't require you to have any blind belief, faith in the dogma or something. It makes sense. So if I don't hold on to the fact that well, I should have had that job. They should not have fired me. Or why did this partner of mine leave me? I've done all these things for her. Doesn't matter. The more I fight with that, however, it will intensify dukkha for me. But the moment I understand, boom, immediately I'm experiencing the third noble truth, which is nirodha. What does that mean? The pain ceased. Which pain? My holding on to it. That was the real pain. Because guess what? Anicca is always there. And even if it's physical pain, it doesn't last. Test it. It changes its color from moment to moment. It's never staying ongoing all the time. There's never been a pain like that, no matter what anyone says. I have laid on hospital beds countless times, had countless operations since I was a kid. I was 8 years old, actually 7. I know pain. I have an idea. But despite the excruciating pain here and there, it changes. It has a beginning. It has an intense. There was one time when I was 12, and the doctor said there's, without getting too gruesome imagery here, my injured foot from my childhood war injury, where I lost a portion of my foot, but 2 of my toes were useless, but they were there. They said in the future some doctor could come and fix it and give it back life, but they didn't. And it kept on every season. In the summertime, it would really get infected, etc. So my parents decided that it's better for those 2 useless toes to come off, amputated. And we didn't have money. We were poor, and they found a place, a hospital, government military hospital, for free for us to go. This is in Lebanon, and I was 12, and they took me there. The doctor and a nurse only put local anesthesia, not general anesthesia, which means I should have gone to sleep. And the doctor did not put enough anesthesia. And he started operating, and he started sawing my toes off. I felt every bit of it. It was excruciating pain, beyond anything one can imagine, because I'm alive, I'm awake, and there's a person cutting, sawing. I could feel the grains of the saw blade, the teeth of it. No matter how many times I cried and told him with my broken Arabic, please stop or give me more, he wanted to save anesthesia. He didn't want to give me some, and he started yelling at me. So what, that though, it also changed. After it was done, it came off. I was like, and then it was gone. I took some pills, but it was gone. It didn't stay like that. I'm sure each of us have our own stories of pain, excruciating pain we've experienced. But if you really go back and try to relive, you see that it didn't stay like that. So it's changing. That's anicca. That's the physical pain. But the problem with dukkha here is the psychological and emotional one that we carry, and we keep it on repeat. That is pain. And that is getting released from by the third noble truth. When you see the first, you see the connection of craving, tanha, to dukkha, that it's all about you, our attachment to it, and you let go of that, there's cessation. It's yours. It didn't happen by some outside divine intervention. You release the craving, you release the pain. Psychological, emotional pain. The physical pain, don't equate the two. They're not the same. The psychological one is more devastating. That's what really kills people inside. But with understanding that means you're on the right path. That means you have right view. Anyhow, my examples are too weak, however, compared to the examples given by Lord Buddha, of course. So I want to jump to the next one. And despite his best efforts, and no matter how exhausted he becomes from his futile efforts of squeezing the horns of a cow, he still will fail in extracting even a single dollop. I'm sorry, this was the butter with the water. Regardless of neither having made a vow or determination to attain his goal, nor not having made such a vow. And what is the reason for this? Because Bhūmija, his approach is radically unwise, for he is possessed and led by his erroneous and crooked understanding, which makes it impossible for him to make a single dollop of fresh butter in that manner. Furthermore, Bhūmija, imagine there was a person in need of fire. So he decides to go looking for it. But on his quest to obtain fire, he grabs a fire stick used for starting a fire. Yet he rubs it against a damp piece of wood that is still green and wet from having been drenched in water, while rubbing the two together with a fervently resolute consistency. Now, however, despite his best efforts, and no matter how exhausted he becomes from his futile efforts, he will fail in starting even a spark, let alone a fire, regardless of having made a vow or determination to attain his goal. Because he has one stick, one fire stick, dry, but the other one is wet and it's green still. So our vow taking intention, no matter how lofty it is, it really means ultimately nothing if it is wrongly placed. Here's another beautiful example that Lord Buddha is giving. The rubbing of fire, which we see in many, many places in the suttas, by the way, in different contexts, but essentially it's referring to the presence of wisdom or the absence of wisdom. Having idhi, for example, or idhipada rather, the four bases of success, and also the success of psychic abilities to develop, but not just psychic abilities, any kind of success in whatever endeavor, especially in the spiritual path, requires chanda. It requires virya, it requires chitta, it requires vimansaka, investigation. So the investigation part, the examination comes in, which means there's panya, asks you, okay, I have the chanda, I have the desire, I have the wish. Okay, fine. Am I applying the right effort? Yeah, I'm consistent. I'm not rubbing the wood together and then stopping. Okay, which is, we stop too soon. No fire is going to come out of that. So yeah, but I'm sticking to it. There's intensity, pressure, dedication. Okay, so I have those two covered. Intention is there. Vidya is there, right? Desire, vidya, and the energy, the effort. The mind, is it there? Is it focused? Yeah. Am I infusing it with more and more interest? Yeah. But wait a minute, how are the pieces of wood? Am I working with the right stuff, with the right ingredients? Don't talk to me about the recipe. The recipe might be flawless. But what about the ingredients? Today, people take the Noble Eightfold Path and go into a pub, into a rock concert, into a bar, into a party. And they say, oh, I'm practicing Noble Eightfold Path. I'm dancing, I'm keeping, they go, Asia, you go to Bali, you go to India, there's the celebration, not just those two countries, obviously. It's a big business. Since the 60s and 70s, They talk lofty, lofty images, spirituality, this and that. Meanwhile, it's all sensuality. Nothing else. Why? Because you're not getting a single genuine awakening happen. That's why they have to resort to other means, alcohol, drugs, or at least the trances that they get into with the music, the drumming, this, oh, it's beautiful, the drumming. Yeah, okay. Nobody became an arahant by the drumming, the sound of drumming. Nobody. Ever. Wrong path. And there goes another life. That's all you have. That's the only asset we have. Whatever we do to escape suffering is going to be done through this life that we have. So how are we spending it? With the right path or wrong path? Wrong path, sorry. That goes into the limitless lifetimes that we have already wasted. This was the chance you had to come to the Dhamma and practice the right path. That's why we need to have Sangvega, the urgency to take up this opportunity and not let it drop, not to drop the ball, as they say. To really dedicate, not so the vow doesn't come first. You have to know what path you're taking. There's many genuine people who go to India and other places, to Thailand, to this, to Sri Lanka, hoping or come to even the Dhamma with the loftiest ideas, loftiest desires. But then what overcomes that? Does it get really roots sent down into the pure, true Dhamma? Or is it locked onto some conceited notions, personal ideas about the Dhamma? That is the problem. So I'm trying to connect the two. Modern issues that we are facing, we are seeing, compared to the wrong views that have always been there today and at the time of the Buddha, as we can see, which promote negligence. That's what sila you're practicing is all about, to protect you from negligence. So you can really live happy. Otherwise, there will be that fight within yourself because you have good intentions, but you're not getting the results. It's frustrating. Some of us have spent decades in this life dealing with that, with those clashes, to understand. And what is the reason for this? It is because, Bhūmija, his approach is radically unwise, for he is possessed and led by his erroneous and crooked understanding, which makes it impossible for him to make even a spark, let alone a fire, in that manner. And so it is, Bhūmija, with those recluses, religious practitioners and Brahmins who live and practice the holy life, regardless if they have indeed vowed and are determined to live the holy life or not. So long as they are driven and motivated by wrong views, wrong intentions, wrong communication, wrong actions, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, and wrong concentration, they will continue to fail in ever attaining the highest fruits of the holy life. On the other hand, Bhūmija, there are many other recluses, religious practitioners, and Brahmins who live and practice whereby, regardless if they did make a vow or determination to live the holy life, so long as they are driven and motivated by right view, right intention, right communication, right actions, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, they certainly will attain the highest fruits of the holy life. Here's a guarantee, which used to drive people crazy, mad at the Buddha, by the way, because he would speak with such authority, something that we in the Buddhist, at least in the Theravada tradition, have lost, where teachers could speak with authority, with confidence, not from their own egos or their personalities, no, but from purely coming from the core that is the Dhamma that they've experienced. We don't have that much today. That's why I usually have three names that I use a lot. Longpo or Ajahn Mun, Webu Sayadaw, and Venerable Katukurunte Nyananda. They were the embodiments of the Dhamma. You can see it, you can feel it in their words, in the truth they spoke. Why? Because they were based upon right view through and through. But that's not unique to them. They never wanted to be, Webu Sayadaw over there to worship. No, he was so humble, teaching us to become like that. So confident but you can't do that with your own ideas about the Dhamma as to how you should practice the Dhamma based on your proclivities and your likes and dislikes. Because chances are you're going on the wrong path, and I've seen way too many people do that. That's a fact. Another life wasted for such individuals. Even if you've come and really genuinely given yourself to the Dhamma sometime, in some way, whether through your generosity, which occurred or occurs once every blue moon, or your real practice, it happens for a few minutes every other month, or taking a time out from your negative inner conversations, or sitting down taking note of your life. Okay, am I living a Dhammically sound life? Or am I abusing myself with all this negative self-talk, self-beliefs, or ideas about the Dhamma? Let me go back and see what the Buddha says. Let me listen to some of the Dhammapada, or read some of the verses here and there in the Sutta Nipada. Maybe I could find myself there. And believe me, you will find yourself in every single line if you approach it wisely, with humility, with curiosity, to try to find out answers, to release you from your pain. Similarly, if one lives and practices the holy life, regardless if they did not make a vow or determination to do so, so long as they are driven and motivated by right view, right intention, a whole series of Noble Eightfold Path, they certainly will attain its highest fruits. So whether you have made the vow or you did not is irrelevant. Imagine this is the king of the Dhamma saying that to you. The vows we make mean nothing, ultimately, if it is not augmented, supported by, based upon the foundation of right understanding. That's why there is no awakening for anyone outside of the Noble Path, the links of the Noble Path. Nobody has ever become awakened, ever, whether in this path, and forget about other paths, but they have to have the right mechanism, the formula, and that formula is only given by a Buddha, which in this case, the reference is being made to the Noble Eightfold Path. That's one of the key points that Lord Buddha even made in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, if you recall, where people came and asked, well, Bhante, is it only in the Dhamma? Is it only in this religion and only in this path that you have arahants? It's like, you're trying to fight arguments, and he says, let me answer you this way. So long as there's the Noble Eightfold Path and people are able to access it, people are able to first teach it, and people are able to follow it and listen and learn from it, understand it, and apply it, the world, the existence will never be short of arahants. He makes it clear. That's a guarantee. The Buddha gives guarantee after guarantee, no matter what other people have said. There's nothing questionable. There's not a single point where you have guesswork involved in the Dhamma. That's why it's called immediately effective. It is immediately seen, sanditthiko. And by you, that's what makes it special. But you will never see that without right understanding. So the same thing he says about anyone who has taken or not taken the vow, as long as they're practicing the Noble Eightfold Path, they will get the fruits of the noble life, the holy life. Even if it's momentarily, sitting there and listening to a Dhamma talk with an open heart. People have attained the first level of awakening, become sotapanna, during a genuine moment of making an offering. Just something. Even if it was the robe on their back, and that was the only robe they had, so I ended up being naked. They offered it to Lord Buddha. But it was so genuine. It was with right view. It was right action. The internal dialogue they were having, because that was the only cloth that they had, him and his wife, these beggars. The only thing they had. She was naked at home because she had lent him that robe, which was only covering her, portion of her body. And he would borrow it to go to see the Lord Buddha, to listen to the Buddha. So he had that argument, but that was the right communication. And he had the right action. And he offered it to the Lord Buddha, and there was the relinquishing of it. The attachment he had. Relinquishing that was all about right effort. And he had to have right sati to be able to do that. All of these things happen very quickly. So the person is practicing at that state of purity all the links of the Noble Eightfold Path, which facilitates the possibility for awakening. And that's what happened. Just from the mere fact of offering. Similarly with your sila. Similarly when you're sitting to practice. Vows mean nothing ultimately, if not supported. But they work beautifully when they are supported. The vows can help you. The wish reminds you. Chanda is important. Don't get me wrong. That fervent desire, the wish, the interest, the desire to attain is necessary, at least for a portion of the journey, to keep you steady. When times are rough, when you're in difficulty, to keep focused. Oh yes, I have made that vow. Okay. But then you drop it. You don't keep looking at the final destination. That's not going to get you there. Every step you take will, however. And then Lord Buddha says a second analogy, which he's now using for the person who's applying the right method, right? Actually, this is the first one. Here, Bhūmija, imagine there was a person in need of some sesame oil, and so he decides to go looking for it. But during his search to obtain some sesame oil, he collects a bucket full of sesame seeds. And after drizzling it with water, he starts squeezing those sesame seeds together by applying pressure on them in the hopes of extracting some sesame oil. Thus, by applying himself correctly and through his strong efforts, he does succeed in extracting sesame oil by pressing and grinding those sesame seeds together, regardless of having made a vow or determination to attain his goal. Why? He has right effort. It should work. Yeah, it's part of the puzzle. Does he have sesame seeds? Yes. Okay. Okay. Now we're getting somewhere. We're actually going to get some sesame oil at the end of this adventure, at the end of this activity. Similarly, by applying himself correctly and through his strong efforts, he does succeed, regardless of, I'm paraphrasing here, regardless of not having made a vow or determination to attain his goal. So whether you do make a vow or determination, yes, I want to become an arahant. Okay. What does that mean? Yes, I want to be a successful businessman. Okay, what does that mean? Yes, I want to be a great father. Okay, what does that mean? How will you go about doing it? It's the same thing with the holy life. Yes, I'm going to purify my heart and my mind. How? Yeah, but I'm going to keep bending the sila rules here and there. I'm going to drink, I'm going to smoke, I'm going to do this, I'm going to enjoy this, that. Yeah, I know it's not part of the five, but I can bend it and be flexible with the rules, right? No. Otherwise, you're ruining the recipe. It won't give you the result. Yeah, I'll practice only those and not practice dana. Good luck. It's not going to work. If you have very good sila, if you have very good, supposedly good meditation, but you are very stingy, forget about it. It's not going to work. It's impossible to work. That's why Lord Buddha would always start with that. And then the devas. Oh, I don't believe in the devas, by the way. Bhante, please don't talk to us about the devas and the rebirth. It's not my cup of tea. Sorry, it won't work without making a room in your heart to even accept the possibility of other dimensions. Remember, the devas have everything to do with the Dhamma still reaching us today. This world being okay still and having survived terrible wars and really close extinctions, that we're still here, that we do have, despite all the chemtrails that they poison us with, we still have some blue skies every once in a while. That is thanks to the help from other beings, the devas specifically, but especially the Dhamma. So we have to get our head out of the sand and see why the Buddha. This was not an antiquated system or cultural nuances, folklore that the Buddha was keeping up with his contemporaries with. No, like some modern so-called secular Buddhist teachers say. That's foolish. Because the Buddha specifically talked about dana, but he spoke about the devas. He spoke about purity of sila. He spoke about the correct path of practice with right sati, samma sati, and samma samadhi. He talked about vipassana. Once the person had all the other requirements met, or at least had the opening to accept them or apply them. This is all part of the having the right recipe. So if your practice is not working, is not getting you the results, hello, that's a red flag. Come back to reading the sutta, if any, and you'll get your answers as to why. And so he's saying, Lord Buddha is saying, despite whether he did vow, did not vow, so long as he's practicing the right Noble Eightfold Path, he is going to get the results. And what is the reason for this? It is because Bhūmija, his approach is radically wise. This is the sesame seed oil extractor analogy. For he is possessed and led by an understanding that is genuinely noble and correct in its motive, which makes it possible for him to extract sesame oil in that manner. And I'm going to jump to the second analogy. Also, Bhūmija, imagine there was a person in need of some milk. So he decides to go looking for it. And so during his search to obtain some milk, he approaches a cow that has recently given birth and starts to gently pull and squeeze her udder in the hopes of extracting milk. And thus, by applying himself correctly and through his strong efforts, he surely succeeds in extracting milk by gently pulling and squeezing the cow's udder, regardless of having made a vow or determination to attain his goal. Why? Because he's doing the right thing. The right method is being applied. And what is the reason for this? It is because Bhūmija, his approach is radically wise, for he is possessed and led by an understanding that is genuinely noble and correct in its motive, which makes it possible for him to extract milk from the cow in that manner. Furthermore, Bhūmija, imagine there was a person in need of some freshly made butter, and thus he decides to make some. So he pours some milk curd into a container and starts churning it nonstop with a stick, in the hopes of making fresh butter for himself. Thus, by applying himself correctly and through his strong efforts, he surely succeeds in extracting some freshly made butter, regardless of having made a vow or determination to attain his goal. Similarly, by applying himself correctly and through his strong efforts, he surely succeeds in extracting some freshly made butter, regardless of not having made a vow or determination to attain his goal. And similarly with the other scenarios, whether he did and did not, or whether he neither did nor did not, it really makes no difference. Why? Because he is using an approach that is radically wise. And the fourth analogy, simile, furthermore, Bhūmija, imagine there was a person in need of fire, and thus he decides to go looking for it. While on his quest to obtain fire, he grabs a fire stick used for starting a fire and rubs it against a dry and flammable piece of wood that has not seen the rain for ages, so it's pretty dry, as he begins rubbing the two together with a fervently resolute consistency. Thus, by applying himself correctly and through his strong efforts, he surely succeeds in starting and building a fire for himself, regardless of having made a vow or determination to attain his goal. And what is the reason for this? It is because, Bhūmija, his approach is radically wise, for he is possessed and led by an understanding that is genuinely noble and correct in its motive, which makes it possible for him to start and build a fire in that manner. And so it is, Bhūmija, with such recluses, religious practitioners, and Brahmins who live and practice the holy life, regardless if they have indeed vowed and are determined to live the holy life or not, so long as they are driven and motivated by right view, right intentions, right communication, right actions, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, they certainly will attain its highest fruits. There's your guarantee yet again. Therefore, Bhūmija, had you been able to offer these 4 similes to Prince Jayasena yourself, he would have not only gained confidence in the Tathagata, as he did, but also in you, Bhūmija. Because Bhūmija did not offer these similes, remember. Indeed, blessed Lord, but how could it have been possible for me to offer these 4 excellent similes to Prince Jayasena myself, since they were just now uttered, and for the first time, by the Blessed One, who spoke these words that were neither spoken before nor passed on from some other source, words that were truly inspired in the spur of the moment, which we all enjoyed listening to and have now learned here from the Blessed One's own lips. This is what the Blessed One said, and the Venerable Bhūmija was satisfied in the words spoken to him by the Blessed One himself as he listened with delight. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. What a beautiful sutta. I hope you enjoyed it as well, and more so than enjoying it, gained a new impetus, a new drive for you to add into your repertoire of tools to use and methods of tweaking your practice. Because what happens is we often are derailed by life, by misunderstandings, wrong views that are inevitable. And that's why this is called a path that is progressive. It requires progressive doing, progressive developing. Anupubhasika. Progressive, gradual training. Gradual because each grade gives us a new perspective of ourselves and our relationship with ourselves and our understanding, because you're going to be able to see the tricks that you pull on yourself, the things that you say to yourself to keep you in the mud, the various different justifications we have for ourselves to justify to ourselves as to why we're not where we want to be. So what unfortunately many of us do is we lift our chest up, we just fill it up with air, and we just say, okay, I'm going to put more gusto and more energy into this, and I'm going to squeeze more, push more, with more resiliency, more resoluteness, with more toughness. Okay, that has its place at times, contextually, but even more so, more importantly than doing that, refueling your tank, as it were, to see whether you have steered away from what the Dhamma is. Many people wonder and ask, Bhante, how do I know? How do I know if I'm getting closer or far? You know, like we used to play that game when you're hidden something and the person closes their eyes and then they open their eyes. It's almost like hide and seek, and you say, oh, warmer, 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 and then your voice pitch gets higher. Or not cold, 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 frigid, freezing, you know, all these things. It's the same thing. But in this path of practice, what is warmer and warmer is more and more state of settled mind, a deeper level of equanimity developing in your heart, a deeper level of understanding, more importantly, developing in you, where you really see that you essentially are totally different than who you were 10 years ago or that from last year. How? Check, as I said first, how am I with my generosity? Do I have it? If you don't have money, if you don't have resources, if you don't have time, if you don't have expertise to offer to others, those who need it, really, you don't have any of those things, but you do want to practice generosity, you still can, of course. Do you keep the smile locked inside your mouth? Or do you share it with the world? Do you give it away easily? Even if it's just to the sky, the blue sky, to the birds, to the animals. Or do you, or are you still holding on to the grudges about for yourself, actually, from yesterday? Similarly with, excuse me, with purity developing. That's the other thing that happens. See if you are as easily inclined to break precept today as you were, let's say, last month or last year. If there is a bigger shift, there's a bigger curve here that makes it almost impossible for you to do what you did back then in regards to breaking sila, that's already a telltale sign that you're developing. You're really getting warmer. So this is another way of understanding the immediate effectiveness of the Dhamma. And it's also ehipassiko, which means come and see. Lord Buddha always invited us. The Dhamma itself invites scrutiny. People come, okay, go ahead, come test me. Experiment, test, examine, investigate the reality and real effectiveness of the Dhamma. You cannot do that in concepts, by the way. You will fail. I mean, you will beat other logical systems and things like that, but that's not the Dhamma. That's nothing. That's nothing. The most important laboratory is your life, and that's where you're going to prove, at least to yourself, the legitimacy of the Dhamma being able to change you to the better. And already you're on the path. You're getting closer and closer and closer. There's no guesswork. Why? Because you see it, you know it. You see its effects. So I will stop now and see if there are questions, thoughts, comments. Okay. I invite you to spend some time with the sutta at your own pace. Look at it, read it, print it, or just look at it on the screen or listen to it. And see how it resonates. Whether it resonates, and whether it gives you, offers you tools to re-engage in your practice, because it's very easy to get stuck, very, very easy. But the whole point of these suttas is, other than to have them be available for posterity, for future generations, is also to help us, you, to have something to fall back on when you do get to the fork in the road type of a situation where you're not certain. Because the whole objective of the Dhamma is to remove that and show you the guarantee aspect of the Dhamma. But we have to be honest. So in our questions, honest in our approach, and especially in our expectations of ourselves, from ourselves, and especially the Dhamma. So the expectations have to be lined up with wisdom that will show, oh, the equation here is different. The product is one, the components are another. 3 plus 3 is going to give me 6. But 3 times 5 is going to give me a different result. It's not going to give me 6. So the methods have to be revisited so that we attain the level of peace and quiet and non-agitation in the mind, which are essential for us to drop into the lower and deeper and deeper and deeper, into deeper nuances of sati, and especially to understand the mind and our relationship to the world. Thanks to that understanding, will change everything while we're alive. Nibbana, that's why it doesn't occur after you die or as a result of death. It's not given. It's not something attained post-mortem. And it's not a state that you achieve And some of the badges or the accolades and stuff that you get are wisdom, I don't know, and other goodies. No. Purifications. No, that comes later after you attain. No. You're cleaning and wiping the dirt off of the mind. And as you're doing that, you're purifying yourself. You're adding more understanding, and you have to relinquish the wrong view to gain understanding. You can't have both. You have to say goodbye to one. The one that kept you in suffering, that's what we're saying goodbye to. So nothing's being lost per se. We're winning the Dhamma. And that's why Sotapanna, another version of it in English, is definition for it is stream winner. You're winning. That's the guarantee that I wish upon all of you. To be in the path, locked in. And it's only a matter of time. So I will stop here and the second time and let us share some merits, transfer some merits. Akasatha Chabhumata Devanagamahiddhika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakhantu Lokasasanam. Akasatha Chabhumata Devanagamahiddhika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakhantu Desanam. Akasatha Chabhumata Devanagamahiddhika Punyantang Anumoditva Chirang Rakhantu Mam Paranti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May your practice continuously grow. May your understanding and relationship with the Dhamma continuously grow and enrich your life and those of all those around you. May the quality of your life change to the better. May suffering disappear for you and your loved ones. May the blessings of the Triple Gem be with you. Until next time. Sukhi Hota.